2, 3. Hello and welcome back to our weekly Parshas Shiur. This is the missing Parshas Shiur from last week when I was not well due to an eye infection. You can still see trace over there. To be able to do it, Parshas Beshalach. Now we did allude to it because we combined, when we looked at Parshas Boy, we did leap forward and link a little bit to Beshalach. But Beshalach in its own right is worthy of serious attention. And so I would like us to consider it. Again, I'm not going to have to, I think, share too much with you, in fact, share at all. I think I'll be able to read where we're up to. And the piece I was like you to look at, if you want to refer to it later, or if you want, you can stop this video and quickly grab your Chumash. You want to be at chapter Yud Daled, and we're looking at Pasuk Tes Zayin and Yud Ches. Tes Zayin and Yud Ches, 17 and 18. So chapter 14, and it's 17. Oh, sorry, yeah, no, it is 16 through to 18. That's what we're looking at this week from the Alshich. Okay, I hope you can see my eye. I'm feeling extremely sorry for me. I certainly am. Okay, so let's look at what it says here. And what the Alshich, I think, has to say here is more than worthy of our attention. I need, actually, for this to work, I need a prop. Oh, and don't put your safer on top of the keyboard because it makes all sorts of poppy noises. I said a prop and it made a pop noise. Okay. Sorry, excuse me. So let's look, if you've had a chance to grab your Chumash, or you switch me back on, with your plenty of chance. Anyway, Yud Daled Tes Zayin. This is what it says. Hashem has said to the Jewish people, to Moshe, that they've made a big mistake. And the passage before that, Yud Daled Tes Vav 15, so it's 14:15 in Exodus. The Jewish people have got the Egyptian army chasing after them. They're panicking. They turn to Moshe and they say, daven for us, pray to God to save us. And Moshe does. And Hashem gives an astonishing response. Moshe, why are you crying out to me? Daber el bnei Yisrael, tell the Jewish people to move on, move forward. Now here the Alshich says something which is going to be troubling. I mentioned this in the seminary I teach in Brooklyn and Bensonhurst today, and I could see the girls sort of going, what? The Alshich says it's sometimes the position of foolish people that when things go wrong in their life, that they daven to Hashem to help them. Well, you can understand why the girls are a little bit shocked by that. What else is a religious Jew meant to do, or a non-Jewish person meant to do, I suppose, religious or otherwise, when they're in trouble, but pray to God. The Alshich continues and says, instead of making things better, they make things exponentially worse for themselves as a consequence of having davened. Does that make any sense? The Alshich says yes. Because you see, when you daven, when you ask God for help, because he is stated clearly the God who is just, then he looks to see whether your account, your heavenly bank account, makes you worthy of help or not. Let me give you an example. Suppose I go to my bank manager because I want to borrow $10,000 because I want to, buy a car, or I want to start a business. And like most bank managers, they're probably a very busy person. He's only going to look at my files half an hour before the interview, before the appointment that I have to meet him comes, and he looks and sees that in actual fact I borrowed $10,000 5 years ago. When he looks at the repayment records, he finds that I'm of course making this bit up, that I've been very poor in my repayments. I've missed quite a few payments. I've not fully paid off the loan yet. When I get there, instead of securing the new loan, which I was looking forward to, I get not only a refusal for a new loan, but a demand that if I don't get the old loan paid off and pretty quickly, I'm going to be in serious trouble. You see, by opening his eyes to my situation, it might be that he finds my situation wanting, and therefore the consequences can be negative. Better not to have reminded him of my existence. It's a little bit like that here. When you ask Hashem for help, then there's a court case open up in heaven, whether or not you deserve the help. And if you don't, then you could be in serious trouble. And that's why Hashem says, and Rashi already says this in the Chumash, this is not the time to pray. There are times to pray, which is almost always, but sometimes it's a time not to pray. Tell the Jewish people to do something. They need to make an investment in their heavenly bank account. And that investment they will be able to draw on to perform the miracle that's going to be necessary for them to get to the other side of the Red Sea. And then we come to the following thing. So I need my prop. The prop is a pink pencil, or red pencil, actually, a red pencil. Or pen, is it? I don't actually know this. Yes, it's a red pen. Okay, so, but we're going to see this is going to transform itself from a red pen into something else in a second. Okay, so here we go. So Hashem then says to Moshe the following thing. So this is, as I said before, 14 and Tes Zayin. Ba'ata haramis matcha, and you, Moshe Rabbeinu, lift up your stick. V'netei es yodecha, and stretch out your hand. Al hayam, towards the sea. Uvakehu, and you will chop it. V'yavo b'nei Yisrael b'soch hayam, and the Jewish people will come in the sea, b'soch hayam, v'yabosha, in dry land. But ani, next passage, I'm going to harden the heart, or change the heart of the Egyptians. But I'm going to chase after you, and I will be honored through Pharaoh and all of his soldiers. Now, if you've been following the Shiurim, you will know that at the end of Parshas, at the end of our Shiur, when we talked about in Parshas Va'era, 7 miracles in Parshas Va'era, 3 in Parshas Bo, remember, and the first 2 letters of Va'era, Vav and Aleph, has the numerical value of Vav is 6. Aleph is 1, so the 7 miracles, 7 of the Makkos in Mitzrayim occur in Va'era, and the last 3 in Bo, and Bo, base, means 2, or stand is numerical value of 2, Aleph is 1, so that gives us the 3. Fine, so that's the 10. So Hashem says, come to Paro, because I've hardened his heart, in order I will put Oisasai Eila. Remember we talked about this? These miracles. What miracles? It can't be the 3 that haven't happened yet. It has to be the previous 7. But after the previous 7, or rather after the 7th, Paro threw in the towel and said, God is the righteous one, and my people are terrible. So what happened? Why did it change? Hashem said, I changed it. I took away his willingness to let you go. I took away his freedom of choice. And Moshe's got to think, said the Alshich, that's so unfair. Yes, I know you're going to think that, but you're wrong. You see, the reason I've got to give him another 3 doses of the medicine is because the 7 have not worked. Even though he says it's worked, don't worry, we're all terrible people, and we admit we got things wrong. That's what he's saying in his lips. Remember, we used the analogy, how do you know if an addict is lying or his lips moving? Well, I'm afraid Paro is addicted to Paro. And when he says that he's thrown in the towel, he hasn't really thrown in the towel. And we're going to see the exact same thing here. You see, it would seem that the medication that Paro and the Egyptians are going to need in order to accept that they've made mistakes, that's going to take 10 doses. But even then, and again, we said this recently, when Paro sees an opportunity to go and get the Jews again, he takes it. And he himself leads the charge against the Jewish people. So there's an Egyptian army bearing down on the Jewish people. As I said before, they get cold feet, they ask Moshe to dab to Hashem, the message comes back, why are you dabbing? Do something. Sometimes doing something is more important than talking about doing something. Anyway, so basically, Hashem says to Moshe, right, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to go over that again, but we'll do it slowly. And let's say we have a prop here. Now, if you're listening to this in the car, I'll have to describe this, but of course, watching in the video, you will see it. It will be dramatic. Okay, here we go. Ata horim es matcha. So Hashem says to Moshe, now lift up your stick. Okay, so I'm just switching off my phone because it buzzed. And it's supposed to be switched off, right? So we will not be disturbed. Okay, so he says, the horim es matcha. So I want you to hear this pen. This is the stick, right? I've now made, you will notice I've made myself Moshe for this particular demonstration, but you know, that's how I see myself. So I lift up the stick. I'm Moshe, and I've lifted up the stick. What comes next? The next 2 words are, and it takes, so 3 words, and stretch out your hand. Please watch. Watch the stick. If I lift up my stick, and then open my hands, the stick falls. Yes? Lift up the stick, stretch out your hands. The stick falls. In other words, what Hashem really said was, drop the stick. Drop the stick. And now let's look, in actual fact, the Alshich is only pointing us to what the words say. It's just that normally we don't translate them properly. Ata horim es ata you, Hashem says, horim es matecha. Lift up your stick. And stretch out your hand. And as I just demonstrated twice, the stick falls. Al hayam, on the sea, stretch out your hand on the sea, abokehu, and you will split it. Very, very interesting. Why is it that Moshe has to do this miracle without the stick, which he didn't have to do in any of the previous 10? All the other ones perfectly okay for the stick to be used. Now, incidentally, we have to pause for a second and let's remind ourselves of a principle which I'm sure I've told you before, and that is in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue, the language that the Torah was written in. That's classical Hebrew, not the Hebrew of the modern Hebrew, which is Hebrew is a modern language. So you get words like civilizatia, meaning civilization, televisia, meaning television. If you walk down the street in Jerusalem, be careful for the manolim, manhole covers, manholim, etc. No, we're talking about the classic Hebrew. In classic Hebrew, there's no such thing as a synonym. Nothing's synonymous. No words are synonymous. Of course, English is a language with hundreds of synonyms. Just check them out. Just go to stick a word in Google and look and just say Google synonyms, and you'll find that almost every English word has about 5 different, maybe more different synonyms. Words mean the exact same thing. No word means the exact same thing in Hebrew. So if I was to say to you in Hebrew, Ish, Gibor, Enosh, Odom, you would translate all 4 of those, I'm sure, correctly as man. But if there are no synonyms, why have we got 4 different words? Because there's different aspects of a man. They're not just man and saying the same thing in different ways. It's talking about different parts, different aspects of being a man. Different word for stick. Well, there is this word here, Moshe's mata. Mata. Then there's a word for stick in Hebrew, which is a makal, mem kuf lamed. And then there's a mashenis, another word for a stick. This incident I'm quoting the Malbim. Then there's sharbit, sometimes used the scepter. Any others? Any of them missed out? I think I'm missing out one at least. But anyway, the point is like this. Different types of stick. A mata. What sort of stick is a mata? Well, let me tell you what a makal is and what I mentioned before. A makal is a stick that a shepherd uses. It's a weapon. A shepherd's crook, in English, a shepherd's stick, is used by the shepherd to protect his flock. King David killed a bear and killed a lion. He had a stick. And it's a fighting stick. The Zulu, if you know anything about South Africa, they fought with fighting sticks, fought each other, trained in battle with fighting sticks. I can't remember the name of it, but it has a specific name. So there's a fighting stick. That is a makal. A mashenis, the other name stick I mentioned, that's a crutch or a walking stick for somebody who needs support. A sharbit is like a king's scepter. It's a stick, but it's a stick of rank. And so too is a mata. After all, what was Moshe's role when, his life is got 3 eras. The first 40 years he's an Egyptian prince, then 40 years he is a shepherd, and then after that he's got 40 years as the leader of the Jewish people. And princes carry sticks. They carry all the sticks of authority. So it's important that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't use the stick. Now let me read to you what the Alshich says, and you'll see why. And this, but just wait for this. This is absolutely fabulous. But ata horim, so here, lift up your stick, the Pasuk said. And the point, says the Alshich. This is what the rabbis are talking about in the Medrash Rabbah when it's in Pasuk Kof Aleph, chapter Kof Aleph Ches. Shama Hu Yisbarach, Hashem said, Lebal Yomer She'in Koich B'Moshe La'asais Nisim Kim B'Mate Elakim. The Egyptians must not be able to claim. I don't want the Egyptians to try and claim that Moshe's got no power, no abilities, except that he has if you forgive the phrase, a magic wand. It's a Harry Potter moment, right? The stick of God that he carries, that's where he gets his power from, but he himself has no power. Well, again, therefore, Hormus, that means to lift up the stick, therefore, Hefreshus of Masecho, and then get rid of it, from you, and through your hand alone was the sea split. So if you ever see any pictorial representations of Moses splitting the sea, he's always holding his stick up. Wrong! You just saw what happened. If you hold this stick up and stretch out your hand, it falls. He did it with his hand. Why? Why was that so important? For that, the Alshich introduces us, or perhaps reminds us, of 2 points, which one of them certainly we've discussed, but one is very important to remember as well. Point one. She'oram midstream, Hoban Ischachman Mishin Israel. Paro said, if you remember right at the beginning of the story, Hoban Ischach Maloi. Let's be clever, loy to him, and maloi is in the singular. And Rashi says there an astonishing thing. Let's be clever with God. Let's be clever with God. So let me give you an important rule, because we just left Hanukkah behind not too long ago. We're coming to Purim very shortly. You see, whenever Hovan is Malo, let's out-clever, let's outmaneuver God, you fall flat in your face. You see, what Parah was saying, as Rashi says there, we know that God always works mida keneged mida. What you do to somebody else, God does to you. It's measure for measure. And that allows you to see, as it were, God's judgment, God's justice, and also allows a person sometimes, when things go wrong in their life, to trace it back to its source and realize that they've done something wrong, because often we make mistakes and hurt people's feelings without knowing we've done so, unless the same thing happens to us, and then we feel it, and we go, oh gosh, I did the same thing. But the general rule is that God punishes somebody in the same way that they meted out something bad to other people. So therefore, if that's the case, we should be clever with him, i.e. God, because we can checkmate him. You see, the rules for the game that he drew was that he always punishes mida keneged mida, measure for measure. But if we drown the babies at birth, drown the baby boys, then that's great. He won't be able to get us, because he promised never to bring another flood to the world. Well, the logical way to get us would be to drown us. But he can't do it, because he made a promise not to drown us. Ha ha! Therefore, we've checkmated God by the rules which he has set up. Sounds quite clever. So here's the rule. Whenever you try and out-clever God, you fall flat in your face. So they tried to drown the Jewish babies in order that there would not be a Jewish baby who would save the Jewish people, one Moses Esquire. And were they successful? No, they were not successful. In fact, Paro, with his great plan of outmaneuvering God, ended up bringing up that baby boy as an Egyptian prince in his own house. And that's why, incidentally, the Egyptian magicians could look into the future with whatever powers they possessed, and they certainly possessed powers, and see an image, literally an image, of the man who was going to save the Jewish people. He looked like a Jew, but he was dressed like an Egyptian, so they weren't sure whether he was an Egyptian or a Jew. So when they decided to kill all boys at birth, it was all boys, including their own sons. Was he a Jew or was he a non-Jew? Was he an Egyptian or was he a Hebrew? Weren't sure. So therefore, let's kill him. But why weren't they sure? Because he was dressed like an Egyptian. Why was he dressed like an Egyptian? Because Paro was going to bring him up in his own palace. The guy that you caused endless slaughter of babies, including your own, you were going to bring up in your own palace. You were trying to out-clever God, were you? Or the Hanukkah story, which we just left behind a few weeks ago, a month or so ago, a couple of months ago rather, then you remember the Greeks welcomed the Jews as, well, Greeks. As long as you gave up Jewish values and embraced their values, you were quite welcome member of society. It's if you wanted to stay Jewish, you were in trouble. Oh, that has a contemporary echo to it, certainly here in the United States of America. So those who gave up, one of my magazine articles I wrote about the Jews and the un-Jews. As long as you become an un-Jew, then that would be fine. And to speed up the process, the Greeks outlawed circumcision, because circumcision made Jews look Jewish, and they wanted them not to look Jewish. They wanted them to look the same as everybody else. Then they outlawed the keeping of Shabbat. As the English diarist Samuel Pepys said, more than the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews. So let's get rid of keeping of Shabbat, because that'll take away the motor, the engine of Jewish existence. Then they banned what we are doing now, the study and the learning of Torah. That became a capital offense, because you stopped the Jews thinking about Torah. then they're stopping them thinking like Jews. You want them to think about Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. We want them to think like us. So let's have them thinking like Greeks, not like Jews. And then, lastly, they ordered that the announcing of the new moon over Jerusalem, that should be banned. And why? Well, it's obvious. When you know the new moon occurs, you know what festivals are going to follow in its wake. And therefore, they're trying to get rid of the Jewish festivals. Were they successful? Not only were they not successful, they succeeded in giving us a new Jewish festival, Hanukkah. Don't try and out-clever God. Oh, and then there is the Purim story. And Haman tries to find the best date, and this again is through astrological calculation, to kill the Jews. And he finds the date that's the ideal date for killing the Jews, when his luck is going to be, and his fortunes are going to be at their height, and the Jews' fortunes are going to be at their nadir. And he even is so confident in the outcome of his predictions or his researches that he builds a gallows in Shushan, the capital, to hang his nemesis, arch enemy Mordechai, and his family on. And what happens? Well, the day that he was so confident the Jews would be slaughtered by the anti-Semites, that the anti-Semites were slaughtered by the Jews. The gallows which he built to hang Mordechai and his family on, Mordechai hangs Haman and his family on. Don't try and out-clever God. Anyway, they do. And so that was the strategy was twofold. They looked into the future and saw that there was going to be a boy born who would save the Jewish people. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen by drowning them, which, as it were, stymies, checkmates God. Not only that, by looking into the future, they saw that the Achilles heel, the vulnerability of that boy, that Moshe, is water. Is water. Because when Moshe hits the rock, instead of speaking to the rock, wait till we get there, and I'll explain to you what the Alshich has to say in that, pure genius as usual. But when he hits the rock, then Hashem says, as a consequence of the fact you did not believe in me, and instead of speaking to the rock, you hit the rock, which brought the water to the Jewish people, you're not getting into the land of Israel. Neither you or Aaron. And that's what happened. So water was his downfall. So let's drown them as well. And that, incidentally, I can't resist. And the Alshich is going to say this, and I don't know how much I'm going to read to you, but I've got to tell you this right now because it's just so exciting. We all know the story, right? Moshe is born. All the Hebrew babies are being killed at birth. And therefore, they put him in a basket. Make sure the basket is watertight. And then they put him in a basket in the River Nile. And that's how he's going to be saved from the Egyptians drowning him? Why didn't they hide him in a cave? Avram Avinu was hidden in a cave by his mother when there was a similar purge of children in order to get at the Jewish boy who was going to be born in those days, one Abraham ben Terach. Let's get rid of him that way. No, let's hide him in the cave or hide him in a forest. Dig a hole in the ground, find a cellar somewhere, hide him there. But put him in a little boat and put him in the river and sail him down the river. Well, you're not hidden in a river. People can see what's floating in the river. The Nile is where they went for their water. There'll be thousands of people who know that Jewish children are going to be killed at birth. And you'll find a little baby crying his eyes out, or maybe not crying his eyes out, but there in that as it floats past. That's a Jew. Take him and drown him. Remember, Jews look different to Egyptians. So therefore, what are they doing with that? And the answer is very simple. When the Egyptians saw that the Jewish people, their vulnerability, or the way they could get them to stop Moshe saving them was to get Moshe through water. As we said before, that meant they were going to kill their own children as well. That's not a popular move for Pharaoh. It may have one that was they calculated was one of national necessity, but it's not going to be popular with its people. And even though Pharaoh is an all-powerful king, all-powerful monarchs, absolute power extends ultimately as far as the people that they rule allow it to. After all, there was an all-powerful monarch of France, the King of France. It's just that there was a French Revolution and he lost his head as a consequence. There was a Tsar of Russia, an all-powerful monarch who was lined up and shot by the people. Then there was the Shah of Iran who had to flee. Then there was the Kaiser of Germany, who had to flee. His final days lived in Holland. And I'm sure I'm missing out many more as well. But you get the idea. It can't have been popular, and he must have known that. He's really, really putting himself in danger by killing his own children. So the moment that the Egyptian magicians who were able to see that Moshe, that person, when they saw that vision of him, and which caused them to kill the Egyptians as well, that he was in the water, they said, he's in the water! That's it! Call it off! Woof. People ran all over the place. No more babies being killed. He's in the water. He was in the water, but they didn't see the whole picture. They saw, in the same way they didn't see the whole picture about Moshe Rabbeinu, they weren't sure exactly who he was, the Egyptian, he was a Jew. The ability to look into the future only works if you see the whole picture. When he was in the water, they thought, he's drowned. But he was in the water in a waterproof basket. That's why they put them there. It wasn't going to protect him from the Egyptians, it wasn't going to stop the Egyptians seeing him. As soon as he was put in the water, that triggered the end of the Gezerah, the end of the outlawing of the Jewish and non-Jewish children being allowed to live. Interesting, huh? But more interesting stuff still to come. So let me read a little bit of the Alshich here. The Egyptians said, let's be clever, let's outfox God. We've already discussed that too. And then the other idea we said, and then he's going to be undone by water. That's another reason for doing this, but we've dealt with that too. But then the Alshich goes on and says 3 points. You see, at this culmination of the whole story of our 210 years of the Egyptian attack on the Jewish people, remember an attack on the Jewish people who had saved their lives from a famine, Hashem wanted to achieve 3 things. And these 3 things are made clear in the Pasuk. If we go back to the beginning of the Pasuk. I'm not going to answer that. Actually, I actually did pause it and go down and see what about the door. UPS and 2 boxes. Okay, back to this. See, after the various offenses against the Jewish people, really what Hashem wants to achieve here is shown quite clearly in the Pasuk. If we look at it again, we've just said they drowned the Jewish people, the Jewish babies, but the real purpose was to get Moshe. That's what they were really doing. Didn't know which one he was, so they're going for Moshe. As a consequence, they drown all the other Jewish people. And of course, the other thing they did was to attack God. They tried to outfox God. And not only that, they added insult to injury when Moshe comes in God's name to say, let the Jewish people go. Remember, Pharaoh said, God? Hashem? Never heard of him. Let me just get down the Guinness Book of World Gods. No, don't know who he is, which is obviously nonsense. Or he wouldn't be strategizing how to outfox God in the first place. So for all 3, there's going to be a reaction. God therefore wants to, as it were, operate in the way he always does, mida keneged mida, but in a way that they never anticipated. So let's look at the Pasuk again. Lift up your stick, Moshe Rabbeinu, and stretch out your hand. The stick drops. In other words, drop the stick. Why? I don't want them to think that it was the stick that did the miracle. It's got to come from you. Why? Because you were the one they tried to drown. You're the one that's going to drown them. That's mida keneged mida. That's measure for measure. But the person they tried to drown will be the one who ultimately splits the sea and drowns them. Not with a stick. So they can't say it's Mate Elohim. No, it's Moshe. He doesn't have to do that in any of the other miracles. In any of the other miracles, that's not the point that's being made. Now the mida keneged mida, the water punishing those who use water as a weapon against the Jewish people. Then what comes next? And then it says, and the Jewish people will come into the sea. As we said before, it can make things worse when your bank account is empty and you try and draw on it, your heavenly bank account. So here's going to be a big investment. So you split it. But before that happens, the Jewish people, the Jewish people will go inside the water. And the whole, says the Medrash of Shevet Binyamin, the tribe of Binyamin, jumped into the sea. to show their demonstration. Oh, you know, he says the problem here. We all know that when the Jewish people come to the Yam Suf and the Egyptian army is chasing behind them, so too was the angel of Egypt, the representative in the heavenly United Nations. There is not too far from here, the United Nations building in Manhattan. If you've ever seen a picture of it, it looks interestingly and remarkably like a large headstone in a grave. Somebody called Rav Yitzchak Hutner once commented on that. Why does the United Nations building so resemble a headstone in a grave? Because that's where they bury the truth. The truth's buried there. But in truth, just like there is a United Nations down here with representatives of all the nations, usually attacking Jews, then at the same time, there is a heavenly United Nations, a parallel of that. And there is an angel who represents the philosophy, the outlook, the Weltschaft of the German word of the nation it represents. And the nation and the angel of Mitzrayim is called Sar. The Sar of Mitzrayim, and the incident of the rule is that no nation can fall till its Sar falls first. That's its philosophy, its outlook. But it had fallen because the Jewish people who had also worshipped idols like they had, in fact, the same idols that they had, which was the sheep, had taken that sheep, tied it to the foot of the bed for a couple of days, cut its throat, and then roasted it and eaten it. Well, that's a pretty clear demonstration in all believe that this is God when he had just chewed it and swallowed it. So they're changed. But the Egyptian said, it's not fair. My people worship idols, but your people worship idols as well. Oh, really? Well, that's not who they are anymore. They just ate your God. But not only that, they've just jumped into the sea before the sea split as a demonstration of they've trusted me. They've jumped ship, or rather they've come back to who they were, the sons of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So therefore, you try to drown them. You will now see them comfortably and safely go through the sea without being drowned, which is not what's going to happen to you. And then, of course, then Hashem, who the Egyptians insulted and tried to outfox, he plays his part, and that's why the next pasuk, the second pasuk we looked at, says, and I have hardened the heart of the Egyptians, but Achrim will chase after you, and I will be honored through that. Now I can be honored. Those who insulted me, now they'll give me honor. I'll be honored through them. Because ultimately it's going to take this to change their mind, change their perspective from power to actually believe that he's good. Not just say it. Even after 10 tribes, he's still 10 Maccas, 10 plagues in Egypt, he's still chasing after the Jews when he can. But this will change things. This will change things. Interesting. But another interesting thing the Alshich points out here is the order. What's the order here? First of all, Moshe, the one who be'ikr, the main one we tried to get, then you're going to be the one who splits the sea. And they'll see that. They'll see you drop the stick. It's coming from you, the one they tried to drown. The Jewish people, you'll safely go through it. But picture this in your mind. You are make yourself an Egyptian charioteer, 3 in each, a captain of each chariot, the horseman, and then there's a fellow who's in charge of handing the weapons to the captain to fire. You're just within about bow range or spear throwing range of the Jewish people, and suddenly the sea, which has hemmed them in behind them, suddenly splits. The seabed comes up to meet them. Dry land, not soggy, muddy stuff. The Medrash actually says that from the columns of salt water spurts little fountains of pure, clear, sweet water to drink. There's even a Medrash that says the apple trees sprung up so they could grab apples as they went through and nibbled. And I suppose you'd never read this book or seen the movie, and you're chasing after the Jews when this happened. In fact, one opinion says it wasn't just one column for the Jews to escape, but 12 for each different tribe. What might you think was coming next? Oh, I think we could probably work this out. You wouldn't need a PhD. You could probably guess what's going to happen if you chase after the Jews. But they do. Hashem says, I'm going to make that. I'm going to make them do that. Those who denied that I existed. Those who denied my abilities or tried to checkmate me. Tried to out-clever me. Not such a clever idea. And of course, they go insanely chasing after the Jews, and it's glug, 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 yiskadal, yiskadash. Brilliant, but notice the order. And that's the last point I want to make in the Alshich. Notice the order. The order is first, Moshe's covenant, the honor of Moshe. Second, the order of the Jewish people. And third, says Hashem, and then me. Who does Hashem put first? Moshe and the Jewish people, ahead of himself. It's something we see in our prayers in Moshe Shabbos. Maybe you'll pay special attention, perhaps, and so will I this week more than normal, if you're seeing the Shiur. It says, in every place you see the greatness of Hashem, you'll also find a pasuk which hints at his humility. And Hashem, and no, the kavod, the honor of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the honor of the Jewish people comes before mine. And the pasuk says, Moshe, drop the stick. Let them see it's coming from you. Jewish people, do something, right? Show that angel that you've got a deposit in your bank account and having to draw on. You've gone back to being the Jewish people. And I suppose I'll deal with what they did to me as well. Who comes first in God's estimation? Klal Yisrael. Something for our enemies who try to be clever to bear in mind. I wish you all a very good chance.